In the spring of 1947, just 2 years after the end of World War II, an explosion was set off in the bustling heart of Galveston Bay in Texas City, Texas. The blast was so massive, eyewitnesses were convinced the Russians had secretly dropped an atomic bomb. Others later said they thought it was the end of the world. Welcome to Uncrating History, the show that tells the stories behind old footage lost in the crates of the National Archives. Today's episode, Chain Reaction, how the post-war building boom led to the deadliest industrial accident in American history. As World War II came to an end, Europe was in ruins. Countries were forced to rebuild from the ashes, and fueling that global rebirth was Texas oil. At the heart of that oil boom was Texas City. Located in the southeast part of the state on Galveston Bay, this port town had grown from a sleepy waterfront to an industrial powerhouse.
Of course, it's natural for Texans to like things big.
Hundreds of ships carrying millions of tons of cargo passed through each year. New arrivals looking for work crammed into every house, apartment, hotel, and shack, sleeping in cars, tents, and alleyways. They had no way of knowing they would soon be in one of the deadliest infernos in American history. On the morning of April 16, 1947, a crowd of people had gathered on the shore at the waterfront of the Texas City port. They were mesmerized by plumes of blood-orange smoke billowing from one of the ships out in the water. That ship was the SS Grand Camp, an old World War II cargo ship that had been carrying everything from peanuts to tobacco to cotton when it had arrived in port a few days earlier. But it had also stopped at Texas City to load one more item on board, 2,300 tons of ammonium nitrate. The dock workers who had loaded the paper sacks of the chemical compound onto the ship had thought it was nothing more than fertilizer, but ammonium nitrate had recently had another use, as an explosive during the war. Unlike dynamite or gunpowder, however, unique conditions are required to set ammonium nitrate off, such as when it is primed by another explosive or heated quickly within a confined space. Around 8 a.m. on April 16th, a fire broke out in the hold of the SS Grand Camp. The cause of the fire remains unknown, but crew members had been seen smoking cigarettes while loading up the ship. The captain didn't want to risk damaging the cargo, so rather than pouring water on the fire, he ordered his crew to seal the hold and pump in steam, which was a common practice used on cargo ships to smother fires. But the steam only made things worse. Around 8:30 a.m., the sealed hatches of the hold burst open from the pressure. Blood gold smoke billowed up into the sky, capturing the attention of the crowds of people on shore. A team of 26 firefighters had arrived at the dock and were now fighting the smoke and flames on the ship, but they were too late. At exactly 9:12 a.m., the ship exploded. The ship's crew, the firefighters, and nearly all of the people on the shore were immediately vaporized. So was nearly everything else within 2,000 feet. The entire ship was launched thousands of feet in the air. The port became a cauldron of melted steel and shrapnel flying at supersonic speeds. Tidal waves crashed ashore. Shock waves crumbled more than 1,000 houses and buildings, including the nearby Monsanto chemical plant. 2 airplanes that had been flying over the city were blown out of the sky. More than half of all windows in Galveston, a city 10 miles away, were shattered. The full scale of what would later become known as the Texas City disaster continued over the course of the coming days, as a chain reaction of fires and explosions spread over the city. Burning refineries and chemical plants spat balls of flames up into the sky. Another explosion from a ship also containing ammonium nitrate, the SS High Flyer, was said to be even larger than the first explosion. The Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, and Texas National Guard rushed in to evacuate residents and search for survivors in the rubble. The disaster claimed the lives of 581 people, injuring another 5,000. Making it the deadliest industrial accident in American history. It would become a turning point in how the nation prepares for disasters, with the development of new laws, new safety regulations, and disaster preparedness and relief organizations. Ammonium nitrate in particular became carefully controlled, although later tragedies have occurred, such as when the improper storage of the chemical compound leveled the city of Beirut in 2020. But perhaps the greatest legacy of the Texas City disaster is how quickly the city rebuilt. Just days after the fires were put out, companies that had lost facilities in the explosion promised to rebuild. The New York Times ran a report on April 19th, a mere 3 days after the blast, and said Texas City could now set an example to the rest of the world by creating a waterfront that will be a model of its kind. Within 4 years, Monsanto built a $50 million new plant. Texas City built 18 miles of new city streets, millions of dollars worth of modern school buildings, 1,100 new homes, 2 new fire stations, a new police station, a health clinic, and a waterfront park. The city became known as the town that would not die. Its rebirth became a symbol of the post-war era in American history, when the nation's ascendance as a global power seemed inevitable. Even a blast comparable to an atomic bomb was only a brief pause, an opportunity to reset and rebuild bigger than ever. Today, little remains of the blast's impact, other than a small cemetery and a memorial park on the waterfront, where the unidentified remains of the dead are buried. The Texas City port now sees thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of passengers, and millions of tons of cargo passing through the bay each year.